Do you think you've seen everything in the animal world? Prepare to be amazed. While most people only know the basics, nature is home to creatures and behaviors so bizarre that they would make any fiction seem boring. There are corals that hunt, fish that fly, and even animals that sleep so much that they become mobile ecosystems. And the most curious thing, all of this is real. In this content, you will discover facts that are as absurd as they are fascinating, and that will completely change the way you see life around you. Have you ever stopped to think that the bottom of the sea is even more unknown than the surface of the moon? It is precisely in this mysterious place that creatures live that seem to have come out of science fiction. The narwhal, for example, is known as the unicorn of the sea. But the most curious thing is that its horn is actually a tooth that grows from its head. That's right, a single spiral tooth that can reach 3 meters in length. And the most impressive thing, no one knows exactly what it is for. Among so many curiosities, the ocean continues to remind us that there is much more beyond what meets the eye. Now, if you thought that sharks were all the same, with the look of something out of a horror movie, get ready. There is a creature called the whale shark that can reach more than 12 meters, and yet it is completely docile and feeds only on plankton. A true gentle giant. But the star of legends and nightmares is the megalodon, a colossal shark that lived millions of years ago. It was the size of a bus and could swallow a dolphin as if it were a snack. And yes, there are still people who believe it is alive, hidden in the depths. Curiosities like these excite even the most skeptical, right? But it's not just about size. The real charm lies in the bizarre adaptations. There are fish that glow in the dark, literally, like the lanternfish, which uses bioluminescence to attract prey. And what about Dumbo the octopus? With its ears that look more like wings, it moves as if it were dancing in space. And who would have imagined that a sea creature would be the inspiration for a Pixar animation? These creatures teach us that nature is more creative than any Hollywood screenwriter, and full of unexpected curiosities. The bottom of the sea holds secrets that science is still trying to decipher. There are species that have never been seen by human eyes, living in regions so deep that not even sunlight can reach them. There, the pressure is so intense that it would crush any ordinary submarine. And yet, life flourishes. This makes us wonder, if such unique creatures can adapt to such extreme environments, what else is life capable of? A good question, and one that opens up space for us to explore another type of adaptation, not as fast, but equally fascinating. While most people are racing against time, some creatures in nature simply ignore the clock. Starting with sloths, these masters of serenity sleep about 20 hours a day and move so slowly that algae grows on their fur. That's right, they literally carry an ecosystem on their backs. The most fascinating thing is that this slow pace is not a defect, but a strategy. They use little energy, attract little attention from predators, and even gain a natural green camouflage. There are so many curiosities that it almost seems like the sloth knows something that we still don't understand about living well. Now, if you think you've ever seen someone walk slowly, it's because you've never watched a snail calmly. Yes, calmly. Because it takes 2 little steps, if we can call it that, every 2 hours. It sounds like a joke, but it's a fact. And do you know the secret to this? Patience and persistence. Carrying its little house on its back, it continues its path without haste, facing sun, rain, and rough ground. It's almost a walking metaphor for resilience. If only we had this consistency when things don't go as planned, right? Another unusual champion of slowness lives in icy waters, the Greenland shark. It can live for more than 400 years and moves so slowly that it can only hunt fish that are sleeping. Yes, this is no joke. It takes advantage of other people's naps to get its meal. And do you know what this teaches? That patience is sometimes the best strategy to achieve a goal, and that speed is not necessary when you have intelligence and opportunity. These curiosities bring lessons that are useful for life. It's not about rushing, it's about direction. So, from the tropical forest to the Arctic seas, slowness shows itself, curiously, as an asset, and not a delay. These creatures teach us that each one has its own rhythm, its own time, and its own unique way of surviving. And when we stop to observe, we realize that perhaps human haste is taking us away from what really matters. Now, what if in the future we didn't even need to run, walk, or even look like we do today. Imagine a future where all humans look alike, symmetrical faces, no hair, big eyes, disproportionately large heads. It sounds like something out of science fiction, but it's a theory that many scientists are considering. With artificial intelligence solving many of our physical tasks, the human body could eventually turn off parts that are no longer as useful. Hair, for example, could disappear completely. After all, why protect your head from the sun when you live in controlled environments? What's more intriguing is the curiosity behind it. Will we give up individuality in exchange for practicality? And it doesn't stop there. In a post-human world, the stage would be set for the emergence of new creatures. Have you ever thought about an animal called the Necropteryx? A hybrid of a bat and an insect that feeds on fungi and lives underground. It may sound like a game invention, but it's inspired by real ecological projections. And what about those so-called terabytes? No, we're not talking about data. They're intelligent silicon-based beings, born from the fusion of living organisms and abandoned technology. A scenario that raises more curiosities than answers, but it makes us reflect. Life always finds a way. Well, flying through the skies of a planet without humans would be like flying fish. They already exist, but imagine if they evolved even further. Instead of just gliding for seconds over the water, these new beings could migrate completely to the air, like amphibious birds. Perhaps their scales would become feathers, or their fins would become functional wings. Does it seem like an exaggeration? Maybe it is. But it is exactly the type of hypothesis that futurology studies in biology like to explore. And in this sea of curiosities, the truth is that imagination is almost a magnifying glass of what science has not yet been able to prove. The most curious thing, and a little scary, is that all of this does not need thousands of years to happen. With technological acceleration, environmental changes, and genetic manipulation, evolution can be forced. What used to take ages can now happen in decades. And when the improbable becomes possible, the world is full of creatures that no one could have imagined. Some of them so bizarre that they could inhabit our worst nightmares. Speaking of which, let's dive into a universe that, although real, seems like something out of a horror movie. In the darkness of the forest or in the forgotten corners of the underground, there are creatures that would make anyone think twice about camping in the woods. But don't worry, the scare is only visual. Take, for example, the AIEAIE, a nocturnal primate with bulging eyes and long, thin fingers like dry twigs. It looks like a character from a thriller movie, but all it wants to do is poke at tree trunks in search of larvae. Among so many curiosities, one of the most incredible is that it uses sound to detect the presence of insects inside the wood. A type of rudimentary echolocation. It seems like magic, but it's pure biology. Now, if you think spiders are scary enough, wait until you hear about the whip spider. Its body is divided as if it were made of articulated parts and, guess what, it has no venom whatsoever. That's right, it scares more than it hurts. Its curious way of moving, with legs that look like copper wires, makes it a living legend among bizarre creatures. And yet, it is completely harmless. In fact, many of these unusual creatures are misunderstood, simply because of their appearance. A great reminder that fear, most of the time, is just a lack of information. There are also giant centipedes, which look like miniature biological trains crawling through the forest. They can reach 30 centimeters and have dozens of legs that move in hypnotic waves. They do not bite, attack, or run. They just follow their path, processing dead leaves and helping to maintain the ecological balance. And this is one of the most poetic curiosities. Many times, the monsters of nature are the true caretakers of the planet. While we are frightened by their shape, they are there, discreetly, maintaining life. And of course, how can we not mention the camel spider? A beautiful name for a creature that seems to have come out of a nightmare, with a powerful jaw and legs as long as barbecue sticks. Despite its frightening appearance, it is extremely shy and prefers to hide rather than confront. In fact, it's not even a real spider at all, it's more closely related to a scorpion. All of which goes to show that weird isn't always dangerous. And when you look closely, the bizarre can actually be fascinating. And speaking of fascinating, just wait until you find out how a coral can be a silent predator. If someone told you that there was a bird that ate upside down, would you believe it? Well, flamingos do exactly that. With their long necks and adapted beaks, They dip their heads into the water and filter small organisms while the rest of their bodies appear to pose for a magazine editorial. Among so many curiosities, this is one of the most eccentric, and shows how evolution is a true designer of unusual solutions. The coolest thing. Each flamingo is a living reminder that not everything needs to follow the normal to work well. And penguins, so cute and popular, hide a detail that many people never realized. They do not have external ears. That's right. Sound enters through discrete openings in their skulls. This helps them cut through the water more efficiently and maintain their balance in the snow. A small detail, but one that carries great curiosity about how form follows function in nature. Incidentally, penguins also have very complex vocal communication. Each one has a unique sound, like a sound fingerprint. Seriously, isn't that brilliant? Now hold on, koalas have fingerprints that are practically identical to those of humans. So identical that they have already confounded crime scene experts in Australia. This is not an exaggeration, it is a fact. More than a simple coincidence, this fact reveals a fascinating aspect of evolution. Similar paths can arise in completely different species. And another interesting fact: koalas have very small brains, but a super sharp sense of smell. In other words, they may not be able to solve a Rubik's Cube, but they would definitely know where the most fragrant eucalyptus tree in the forest is. And to round off this parade of incredible adaptations, how about predatory corals? Yes, the ones that many people think are just colored rocks. In fact, they are animals that hunt. They use tentacles with stinging cells to capture microorganisms from the water, as if they were underwater carnivorous flowers. A detail that completely changes our view of the bottom of the sea. After all, behind the beauty, there are silent and effective survival strategies. And this leads us to a deeper reflection. What else are we ignoring because it seems too simple? After so many interesting facts, it's hard to look at the animal world in the same way, right? There are animals that sleep all day, fish that fly, corals that hunt, and all of this is real. Now tell me, if even these creatures adapt and innovate to survive, what's stopping you from doing the same in your own life? Maybe it's time to learn from nature. It's a master at showing that even the strange has a purpose. Which of these interesting facts surprised you the most? Comment below. And if you like learning in a light and thought-provoking way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the next content may change your way of seeing the world even more.